The Festival of Coins is brought to you in partnership with the Numismatic Guaranty Corporation and the Royal Mint Museum.
Okay, so welcome to the Festival of Coins and to this session with our festival partners NGC and PMG. We're delighted today to be joined by Colin Blyth. Colin's a paper money collector and has been for over 20 years. He joined PMG in 2018 and specialises in South and Central American notes. Colin's a life member of the ANA, the American Numismatic Association, and also the International Banknote Society, and he's a member of the Society of Paper Money Collectors, NumisCol, based in Colombia, and the Cuban Numismatic Association of America. Colin's written many articles about banknotes for the IBNS Journal. He's lectured on paper money, and today he's going to talk about overprinted banknotes. So I'm really looking forward to the talk, Colin. I will hand the floor over to you, and thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Matt, and thanks for inviting me to speak to the Festival of Coins. And I know this is going to be predominantly a group of people here, so I thought I'd do a topic, overprinted banknotes, that you may find it has some parallels to counterstamped coins. So I hope you find it interesting. So let me just show you what I want to cover today. And I'll start with just giving a brief introduction to paper money guarantee, or PMG, and then talk a little bit about why banknotes are overprinted and the types of overprinted banknotes, or in other words, the reason why are banknotes overprinted. There's often several different types of reasons. And then finally, why even collect these things. And I thought I'd start by showing you can see these images on the right. And to me, this note embodies why you want to collect overprinted notes. And you can see the note at the top right. That's an 1892 $5 Canadian Bank of Commerce note. It's a very beautiful note in its own right. But you can see on the bottom left here is an example of this same note that was overprinted with a Yukon overprint in around circa 1896. And that Yukon overprint was done to designate that these notes would circulate in the Klondike region of the Yukon. And Yukon's in the northwest part of Canada, borders up to Alaska. And these Yukon overprints were done in the 1896 to 99 era, where a big gold rush was going on in the Klondike region, and about 100,000 prospectors poured into the region over this period. And I look at this note and I can just imagine a prospector trudging up a snowy covered mountain with a backpack full of his gear, with this Yukon overprint $5 note in his pocket to buy supplies. And I think that really summarizes what makes overprints so exciting. It's that emotional attachment. It's having seen that Yukon overprint really can transform you back in time when that note was in use. So there's a lot of this excitement and attachment to the note. So I'll start by just giving you an introduction to paper money guarantee, or PMG. And PMG is the world's largest third-party authentication, grading, and encapsulation service for paper money. We've certified more than 6 million notes since 2005. And just to put that in perspective, all the other grading companies out there combined have not graded anywhere near that number of notes. So the numbers certainly speak to the trust that the collectors have put into PMG grading their paper money, and we are the third-party authentication service of choice for a lot of collectors out there. And the locations of PMG, we're headquartered in Sarasota, Florida, US. We have two secure facilities totaling 82,000 square feet. And the facility on the bottom right there is our newest building. And both these facilities have access controlled walk-in vaults for secure storage of collectibles, a staff of armed guards, and hundreds of security cameras. So the message there is when your valuable collectibles come into our custody, they're both insured and very, very well protected while they're in-house until you get them received back. We have offices in London, Munich, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. So truly a global footprint. And unlike some other third-party grading companies out there that may have one or two people there and they're operating at a small little location, this is PMG is not a mom and pop shop. It's a very large organization with a team of dedicated numismatists. A lot of experts in many different fields work here, so you can be assured that your items are coming under the watch of very experienced professionals. Paper Money Guarantee is part of a family of third-party authentication services that are under the umbrella of Certified Collectibles Group, or CCG. And for those coin collectors out there, you'll no doubt know the NGC name, the name very well for our coin side. You also may or may not know some of the other divisions, but CGC, which is Certified Guaranteed Company, does very, very popular grading of comic books. And they also do a new division, which grades trading cards. So like the Pokemon card pictured here, or Magic cards. And Certified Sports Guarantee is one of our newest companies, and that's for sports card trading. You may be aware that in July this year, Blackstone acquired a majority stake in CCG, and they have a commitment to further expand CCG's geographical and product reach. So we're a large company, and with plans to get larger in the future. And I think collectors, a takeaway is the deep financial strength of the company. And so when you get a coin certified by NGC or a paper money certified by PMG, there's a guarantee that goes with it, and with the company has the financial strength to back up that guarantee. So enough about the infomercial there. Let's get into what exactly overprints are. So we're talking about collecting overprinted banknotes. So we should first start saying what is an overprint in itself. And an overprint is an additional layer of text or graphics that's been added to a banknote after it's been printed. And if you can see an example of the note on the right, there's the engraved printing is the main part of the note, and this is high quality intaglio printing. It's made from steel plate under high pressure. After that note was made, an overprint such as this was then applied. And most commonly, these overprints are applied by letterpress, or that's a relief type of printing. So unlike the intaglio printing here, which is engraved into steel plates, so it's a recessed area where the ink goes. Letterpress or relief printing is a text image that is to be printed on a raised area that's inked and then applied to the paper. And so an example of relief printing would just be a common stamp like this. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but you can see that the text and graphics have been raised above the face of the stamp. Ink is then applied, and you can stamp the image down. You'll also see that in a typewriter. You have a key that might have a letter E on it, for example, and that is strikes the paper. Usually there's a ribbon of ink between it, but this is ink nonetheless. It strikes the paper, and the imprint of the E is left. For letterpress, you'll often see that for the serial numbers. So most notes that you'll have in circulation will have letterpress serial numbers. It's essentially a wheel with numbers on it, and there's several wheels all together. That the numbers will line up to form a serial number. You'll ink those. They get stamped onto the note, and then the dials advance the next number. It's inked again, and so on. That's I should just put. I've got a little note here at the bottom. paper money collectors or banknote collectors are sometimes use these terms very generically. And so you may hear say banknote or paper money or note. And that's all meaning the same thing in a generic sense, that it's either paper or polymer money issued by various authorities around the world. And I'm saying it's generic because sometimes when we call something a banknote, that technically should mean it's issued by an actual bank. And most notes are, but there are notes out there that, for example, are issued by municipal governments, provincial governments, or by companies. So they're not actually issued by banks, and yet sometimes confusingly we generically may say it's a banknote. So sometimes people say, well, let's say paper money, that's better, but then that doesn't cover new types of substrate like polymer. So then sometimes we'll just say note. So just if I interchange them, forgive me, but you'll understand it's a generic sense. So now that we know what overprints are, why are banknotes overprinted in the first place? Why don't you just make a new banknote? Why are you putting these funny overprints on them? And I'd point out that overprints are issued banknotes, unissued banknotes mark historical periods of crisis or celebration, such as severe inflation, regime changes, or commemorative events. So these are not normal situations, often emergency situations. They're one-off situations. So that's the best way I can describe it. Overprints are not done in normal times. In addition, overprints are used to distinguish a banknote that is not able to be circulated not able to be used as a circulating medium of exchange. And for example, a canceled note, it's been returned back to the bank. The bank has redeemed it, stamped canceled on it. It's no longer able to be circulated. It's no longer legal tender, so to speak. And I'll talk a bit more about specimens and canceled notes as we go on. The note up here is cool. This is actually a note. If you can see the date, it's November 20th, 1918, and it's a Government of Malta note. It was produced during World War I, and just before it got issued, World War I ended on November 11th. So you can see there's a very quick period here where it almost got issued but didn't. They ended up stockpiling these notes. Then as World War II started, so they between 1919 and 1939, Malta used British notes, so Bank of England notes circulated in Malta. But when the World War II started, there was a shortage of coinage, and there was also risks of transporting notes from England to Malta. So they decided to take these non-issued notes out of stock and overprint them. So the 2 shilling note got overprinted with a 1 shilling marker to become a small change or coins in the region. So I want to talk, there's many different reasons or types of overprinted banknotes, and I don't want to claim I've got an exhaustive list here, but I tried to come up with a list that I think would account for the vast majority of overprinted notes out there. So so one reason you might overprint a note is to change the denomination. You might do it to change the name of the banknote or the issuer, the bank issuer or the note. Another overprint could identify that it circulates in a specific region of circulation, and that's much like the Yukon overprint that you saw at the very beginning. And another is more for celebration or a commemorative type note. And then you got to have a canceled note that's been overprinted to say it's no longer valid for circulation. And then there's specimen notes, and I'll talk about specimen notes in a bit more detail. But I think this note is very interesting, and part of it is I specialize in South and Central American notes. I'm always going to find notes from those regions interesting. But in 1933, the Nicaraguan government realized there was a shortage of notes in circulation, but their records showed that there was a lot more notes in circulation that was apparent. So in other words, they thought there should be X number of notes circulating, but they could really only see X minus Y in circulation. So in 1934, they issued an executive decree that required all the notes to be redeemed, so turned in, counted, and then revalidated. And this is the revalidation stamp. You can see revalidado in a diagonal red overprint here, and that's to mark that the note has been counted and revalidated. So this is one situation where actually where an overprint is more common than the non-overprinted note, and that probably makes sense in this case. This is a 1932 1 Cordoba note that would have been in circulation at that time, which was then subsequently overprinted in 1934. But because the note would no longer be valid unless there was the revalidado overprint, it was to your financial benefit to get these notes overprinted. So ones that remain without the overprint are really notes that probably got tucked away by accident somewhere, like maybe somebody left this in a book. But regardless, there is not very many of these 1932 notes that don't have the revalidado overprint on them. And in fact, this note here, the 1932 issue, is the only note that PMG has graded to date. So I want to explore the different reasons that we mentioned here, why notes might be overprinted. I'm going to go through each one of these bullet points and just give you a few visual examples. I just want it to be fun and look at the different types of notes. So the first reason why you might overprint a note is to change the denomination. And during the 1980s, there was a period of very high inflation in Nicaragua. And in 1989, they overprinted the 1985 10 Cordobas notes up here with a 10,000 Cordoba note denomination. And you can see that the overprint hides the 10, it hides the 10 Cordobas down here and puts the new denomination, and then seals cover what used to be the 10. And you know, I find it interesting. We're talking right now about the fears of inflation coming back, and when you're seeing 5%, 6% inflation, you start to get nervous. Imagine living this time in Nicaragua, your 10 Cordobas notes is suddenly inflated to a 10,000 Cordoba note between 85 and 89. That's real inflation. Another example of denomination change is from Colombia. And due to a scarcity of coins in circulation, the Colombian government decided to overprint 1942 and 43 1 peso notes with a Medio peso overprint. And they did that on the left side and the right side of the note. It was printed. Then they sliced the note or cut the note in half and created half notes of Medio or half pesos. And those circulated like coins, but obviously with the overprint on. And here's another example of denomination change from Paraguay. So the note in the top right is a 1923 Paraguay 1,000 peso note. And in the bottom left, you can see in 1943, Paraguay decided, unlike the Nicaragua note that I showed you, where they just started to add 3 zeros to the note and inflate that way. Paraguay is going through the same inflation, but instead decided to, instead of adding zeros, they would knock off some zeros. So the 1,000 became 10, and they changed the denomination from pesos to guaranis. And I guess guaranis was supposed to sound like it was guarantee or new, stronger than the pesos, but it's somewhat amusing to see that the pesos actually 1000 pesos Rarity, which is a strong peso. So I guess it wasn't that strong after all. And here's another example of a denomination change. This is from Cyprus. And unlike the Colombian one that I showed you, that was the Medio peso, it was sliced in half. These 1 shilling notes from the British administration of Cyprus, they cut the right 40% of the note. So it's just the right half and it's only the 40% of the note. And they overprinted just the right half. They didn't use left and right, just the right half with a 3 piastres overprint. And that was a stopgap for small change. And I don't know this for sure, but I'm gathering they didn't cut 50 go into the middle of the note because they didn't want to cut King George VI's head in half in doing so. That was probably why they have the right 40% of the note. So then we'll move into the next reason or type of overprinting, and that's to change the bank name or the issuer name. And I've used an example from Colombia. This is a 1908 Colombian El Banco del Sur 1 peso. And after following World War I, there was a shortage of cash in the area. And for this reason, and to save money, in 1919, Banco Lopez overprinted the Banco del Sur note. They put a new date on here. You can see 1919. Up at the top where El Banco del Sur was, they've overprinted that El Banco Lopez. And this is a little bit hard to see, but it is there. It's El Banco and then Lopez. And they've also canceled out the names of the initial signers at the bottom. And this is a really cool note from China because there's a lot going on with it. So not only is there a bank name change at the top, but there's also a denomination change, and they've even changed the branch of issue at the bottom. So you can see up at the top, it's a Russo-Chinese bank note that was changed to Russo-Asiatic bank. And you can see Chinese here has been covered with Asiatic. The 100 teals denomination here has been overprinted, and they've to cover it up, and they've added $100 as the new denomination. And then the Tianjin branch at the bottom left has been covered up, and they've added a Harbin branch. So that's a really cool one to get because it's got an example of a lot of different reasons why you'd overprint a note. And then here's another example of a bank name change. But I use this as an example because this one's not quite as clear or easy for the collectors to see. And what happened in this period, this is from Paraguay. And in 1879, the fledgling Republic of Paraguay was struggling to set up a financial system, which included setting up some banks to encourage business in the region. So with the government's encouragement, a small bank, El Banco del Paraguay, started. And this is started by two gentlemen with a capital of only 10,000 pounds. So you can imagine there's not a lot of deep pockets there, but they're trying. And they lasted long enough that they could actually issue a really popular, nice looking series of banknotes in 1882. They're dated 1882, and it's an animal series and very, very popular with collectors. But by the time 1883 rolled around, the Banco del Paraguay was in serious financial trouble to the tune that they had to be saved and acquired by Banco Nacional de Paraguay. And rather than the Banco Nacional de Paraguay withdrawing the El Banco del Paraguay notes at the time and issuing their own notes, I think bluntly, to save money, they decided instead simply to put an overprint on the back of these notes. Are unifaced, there's nothing on the back of the note, so this is the back of the note. They put an overprint on the back, and the overprint act says Banco Nacional and has the date 1883. So what this overprint has done is now guaranteed the note and identified it as a Banco Nacional issue, rather than the El Banco de Paraguay. And that's why you'll see on the PMG label, even though the note says El Banco de Paraguay here, it's a Banco Nacional issue because of the 1883 overprint on the back. And I wanted to show you, this is actually my favorite note in the series. It's the 20 centavos note. And this is the same 1882 El Banco de Paraguay note. You can see the bank title here, and the where's the date? The date is up here. So that was from the original issue of El Banco de Paraguay. This one, like the example I showed on the screen, the 10 centavos example, was overprinted on the back, and you can see there's several stamps on the back, which is common. You'll see different bank stamps in this era. You'll even see it on modern notes. But the stamp you need to look at for this purpose is the middle stamp. That's a Banco Nacional 1883 overprint, and that's why this one has been identified as a Banco Nacional 1883 issue by PMG. So the Banco Nacional circulated these notes, these overprinted notes from 1983 to 1883 to 1886. And in 1886, finally got around to issuing their own notes. And here is an example of the note. And let's see if we can try to get the reflection off. But the notes are essentially identical, except if you look closely at the bank title here, you can see that's Banco Nacional de Paraguay rather than just El Banco de Paraguay. And the date has changed to an 1886 date. So this can be a very, even though it's a beautiful series, it also can be quite challenging because you have a period where you have 1882 issued El Banco de Paraguay notes. Then in 1883, when Banco Nacional took them over, Banco Nacional, you can find these notes that are overprinted with Banco Nacional. So you can have two types. You can have this type as just the 1882 note, and you can also have it as a Banco Nacional issue with the overprint. Then as you move into this type, the 1886 Banco Nacional note, that they continued on until 1890. And in 1890, they too went under some serious financial trouble such that the Republic of Paraguay had to bail them out. They took over issuing banknotes, and private banks ceased after 1890 in Paraguay. But there's actually a period here in 1890 where the Republic of Paraguay overprinted these notes with an 1890 overprint. So those are technically Republic of Paraguay issues. So it's fascinating. It also, it can be great opportunities for cherry picking because there's not a lot of people out there that, unless they're specialized in this series, will know all those differences. So hopefully, maybe if you pass one of these at a bourse table in the next year or two, it may catch your eye. And here's one of my favorite reasons for overprinting a note. It's to identify a specific region for the circulation of that note. And the example shown to the right is a Pakistan note, but it was an Indian note that's been overprinted with government of Pakistan. And Pakistan separated from British India in 1947. And as part of that transition, during 1948, and I've got here April 8, 1948, these Indian notes were overprinted for exclusive use in Pakistan only. And this was a transition until Pakistan got their own series of notes from Thomas de la Rue in October 1948. And they were subsequently demonetized in Pakistan in 1949. But what a cool piece of history there. And collectors know this. Not only is that overprint more scarce, it's just very, very popular. So the Indian note is of course popular in its own right, but you have this overprint on it, and the scarcity and value jumps significantly because of the demand for notes with those overprints. And US collectors out there will instantly recognize this note. This was as a precaution against the Japanese invasion and occupation of Hawaii. In 1942, the US specially marked 1934A series US currency with a Hawaii overprint. And you can see Hawaii is overprinted here and then on each side of the note on the face. And that overprint was done in the event of a Japanese invasion. the overprinted currency could have been declared worthless. So it was a precautionary measure. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and there's still a fair number of Hawaii overprints out there for collectors, so you can still buy these at fairly reasonable prices in the market. And what a cool piece of history. So I'll jump over to Africa, and if you look at this note, after the separation of Rwanda and Burundi in 1964, Burundi overprinted these 1960 to 61 500 franc notes with big Burundi overprint, and that was for exclusive use in Burundi. And another example here is this note from Uruguay. And for a brief period, the Banco de República Oriental actually overprinted some of their notes to recognize that these were branch office issues. And you can see Montevideo here, which is the capital and the main central area of Uruguay. All those notes coming out of the main bank were not overprinted, but in more the remote regions of Uruguay, there was branch offices, and they, for a brief time, applied the overprint. The head office then decided you don't need to do this anymore, and that ceased. So we see this in 1888, the lower denominations, like the 1 and the 5 peso, those were ordered to be pulled out. They still allowed the higher denominations to be overprinted, but there wasn't very many of these high denominations anyway. So either the overprint or the non-overprinted in a higher denomination like that is actually quite rare. But on the smaller denomination ones, having that overprint is extremely valuable because it only lasted for several months where they did those branch office overprints. And it can be confusing for collectors of Uruguay to know when an overprint is valuable or not, because the 1887, so the earlier issue of Banco Nacional in Uruguay, it was very common to overprint notes for the regional distribution areas, and you can still fairly easily find overprinted notes. But as you moved in now into 1888, 1899, where the Banco de República Oriental is issuing the notes, any overprinted notes from that issue are extremely scarce. So again, it's good to keep in your mind, if you see any República Oriental notes that are overprinted, it's probably a good idea to grab those and then find out later what you have. So to move on, for another reason that overprinting is done, it's a celebration or a commemorative event. And I've got an example here of a Bermuda 1994 $100 note. This was an overprint on an 89 series. And you can see right here at the bottom left is an overprint commemorating the 25th anniversary of the Bermuda Monetary Authority, 1969 to 1994. And another such example of a commemorative note or a celebratory note is shown here. It's a Costa Rica 1971 10 colones. And that's got the overprint at the bottom left, commemorating the 150th anniversary of the independence, 1821 to 1971. And another reason for applying overprints is to cancel or withdraw money from circulation. I mentioned cancel before. You could actually have a rubber stamp or stamp that a note has been redeemed by a customer. Might be a bit raggedy, they're just taking it out of circulation. They'd often put a canceled stamp on it to indicate it's been redeemed and withdrawn. So it should no longer be circulated as a medium of exchange. In other words, it's not legal tender. But this is a cool overprint, and collectors, this is a Bank of England £1 note, and it's affectionately called the Guernsey overprint by collectors. And this was a World War II overprint. It was done before the German occupation forces arrived into Guernsey, the local officials overprinted an estimated 5,000 pieces with this overprint that says withdrawn from circulation September 18th, 1941. And that was to stop the legal tender notes falling into the hands of the German forces that could be used elsewhere. So that's another great marker of a moment in history and highly sought after by collectors. And you can see with 5,000 pieces having been overprinted, there's still availability in the market to be able to find one of these. And now I'll talk about specimens. That's another reason you may see an overprinted note. And specimens were made by the printing company to give to the banks or to the tellers or other people that are looking at the note, to give them an idea what the new design will look like, to approve it, to acquaint the tellers with what's coming down the pipe. And you'll see unique identifier overprinters primarily being the specimen overprint. So that indicates it's just an example note, you can't spend it. Specimen notes also can have other things on it like canceled or perforations, or it's very common to have all zero serial numbers, such as this one. And here's a specimen perforation in the center of this note as well. But it's really the overprint that stands out, specimen, meaning this is not a note that can be spent. So why collect overprinted notes at all? And I think, as you can see, as we've talked, for me, what really comes out is that record of history. It captures a moment in time, a very unusual event. And collectors can have a very deep emotional attachment to that event. Just by looking at that overprint, it brings you back to that event. It's also a great record. You can see as the country went through the non-overprinted to the overprinted note, you can see a transition in history. So that no doubt in my mind is the #1 reason for collectors wanting overprinted notes. Also, there's collectors that collect notes by theme. So you can have you might collect by country, you might collect by denomination. There's a lot of different ways you can collect, and there's nothing right or wrong about whatever way you want to collect. But overprinted notes, there are collectors that just concentrate on collecting overprinted notes. And then I put this third point, rarity. I think it's human nature to want to get things, to collect things that are unusual or scarce or rare. And overprinted notes will often fall in this category. I'd say I put it as an example here. This is an Iranian note, and in the 1978 to 79 revolution that happened in Iran, in 1980, the new regime overprinted the notes from the late 70s, and they covered the Shah of Iran with graphics, and they also covered the watermark, which was also of the Shah, with the lion and sun symbol, and that was done to discredit and disgrace the former regime and the Shah. So it's a real moment of history recorded here. And I'd like to end here with the last slide. And this is I've got a title here, Trust in What You Collect. And overprinted notes are really cool, and they're sought after. And because of that, you will often get people trying to fake overprints, either with creating a rubber stamp or using an inkjet or laser jet printer, print on top of a normally issued note. So collectors have to be very diligent to understand and look at the characteristics of these overprints. And that's where PMG can really come in. We do deeply understand what the characteristics are of these overprints. And once it goes in a holder, we are guaranteeing that overprint is authentic, and that's backed up by our guarantee. So for collectors that are putting a lot of time, energy, and money into collecting overprinted notes, they want to make sure that that when it comes time to sell or when it comes time to buy, that they know what they're buying is a genuine overprint. So that's a good little reassurance for collectors to know that that really is authentic when they buy it in a PMG holder. I thought that when I told the graders in the PMG grading room that I was going to talk about overprinted notes, I asked them, what's your favorite overprinted note? And I've tried to concentrate on the senior graders. So these are what we call finalizers. So there, for example, there might be 3 people, graders grading a note. They'll each put their own opinion on what that grade is. And the finalizer will then do the same thing. He'll grade the note, but he then looks at the grades that the other 3 graders gave and ultimately decides what the grade should be. So for example, if one person thought it was a 25, one thought it was a 30, and it's one of those notes that's right in between, the finalizer's expertise will look at the note and determine which grade it goes. And I would point out to the finalizers and the graders at PMG there's a lot of history majors there. They get a real kick out of looking at these notes, and especially the overprinted notes that come through. And the graders there, these finalizers, when I asked what's your favorite overprinted note, a common consensus was this Victory overprint. And this is a Philippines Victory overprint. So it was done in 1944. And the Victory overprint was to celebrate the liberation of the Philippines from Japanese occupation. And that was done right on October 20th, 1944, when US General Douglas MacArthur returned to the Philippines. And another really cool part of this Victory series is you can see on the front of the note, it says Victory series number 66. And what is that 66 for? The second president of the Philippines, and that was Manuel Luis Quezon. He died at 66 years old in August 1944, so just prior to the liberation of the Philippines. So that was a recognition to the president of the Philippines putting series number 66, which matches his age when he died. So it is a really cool overprinted series. You've got just the sheer joy of victory and the liberation of Philippines showing up here, and the recognition of their president up there. So it's just I can see why it's one of the favorites. And I'll stop there. I just the whole purpose just give you a very general overview of overprinted notes. I hope you enjoyed it, especially the coin collectors out there. I hope maybe you might even consider looking and starting to buy 1 or 2 overprinted notes for your collection if something's of interest to you. So thanks very much, and I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thank you, Colin. That was great. Really interesting. Some really nice designs. I love some of those banknotes. What can I ask a few questions?
Sure.
Firstly, what's the appeal with the South American and Central America? Is that just something that you've chosen, or is that particularly overprints particularly common in that region?
I think a combination of both, Matt.
Okay.
I've tended to probably have a little bit more overprints from South and Central America just because I know them. I just have an attachment to them collecting. There's overprints from many different parts of the world, so there's probably more skewed there because of my interest in them. But you're also right that there was a lot of chaotic things going on in South and Central America during that period. And I mentioned that overprints happened in times of crisis, and there was no shortage of crises then. And so probably percentage-wise, there's a lot more overprinted notes from that region as well. Yeah, it's fascinating region. Just from that short, presentation, you can tell there's just so much to explore. One thing I was wondering, are there many overprints that are still discovered? Are there new discoveries being made? that's something that never ceases to amaze me, is the discoveries that are being made, and not just for overprints, across the whole board. I would say, every year we get one or two new notes that we've never seen, and that's probably even an underestimation. I mean, just in the last couple of months, there's been two notes that are very, very rare notes that have showed up. One from Venezuela that we didn't even know existed before, but
Wow.
with a lot of research into it, and it was in a very unusual time period in Venezuela. We confirmed that the signatories were correct. We confirmed that the denomination, the region was correct. And it's so exciting when things like that happen. So yes, that's also can happen for overprinted notes. And I'm sure there's varieties out there we haven't discovered yet. And that's the one amazing thing about getting to work at PMG, is to be able to see some of these things come in. And it comes, you do a double take and say, how did this show up? It's been hundreds of years. Where has this been? How did it show up? But these things are still happening. So I have no doubt there's probably more overprints out there that we're not aware of. And we're always looking anxiously for things like that to come in so we can identify new notes. And with PMG's expertise in identifying notes, we do have the confidence to be able to put, if we can work backwards and find historical records and verify this note to our opinion existed, we will put our money on and guarantee that. So, we do take the time and look at these unusual items, and I mean that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is strange things showing up.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and are there any resources for overprints? Are there lists or anything like that people can kind of refer to, or start, so they can start off, or is it just a case of exploring?
It's probably a case of exploring more than saying there's a catalog just exclusively for overprinted notes. Okay. But I would suggest you can go to a country you're interested in, and there's lots of country catalogs or general catalogs. So the most collectors will know they're the standard catalog of world paper money. So that's probably a good place to start. Mm-hmm. You can go through that, and you'd be able to find overprinted notes for that country by reading the descriptions in there. You can also, there's things like the banknote book, which is very good in terms of discussing giving a lot of detail on why these overprint happen. So I'd say that's an excellent source as well. One good source is banknote.ws. If you go on there, it's a very cool site that's got, what I like about it, it's got color images of all the notes, and you can flip through there and be able to see some of the overprinted notes. But unfortunately, one of the best ways is through specialized catalogs. So actually, if you wanted Colombia, you get a specialized Colombia catalog. You want India, you get a specialized India catalog. So those are available in the market, but it's expensive. So if you're just interested in checking it out, I would stick to maybe more general catalogs like the standard catalog of world paper money, or just go into free sites like banknote.ws and check those out. Excellent.
Okay, and I think you answered this question during the presentation, but it struck me that with overprints, if an overprinted version of a banknote is worth a lot more, then there are going to be people that try and forge that overprint. So I guess how's the best way to kind of avoid those forgeries?
Well, it's a bit of a cliche, but they always say buy the book before the note. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why that cliche exists, because it's true, and educate yourself before you buy something, and that's part of that education process, is understanding what a genuine overprint looks like. And someone could just create a new modern rubber stamp and overprint it, and you need to know the exact difference between what a letterpress is, what intaglio print is, what certain rubber stamp, the characteristics, what are the height, the dimensions of the letters, was there any little notches? So it's very similar to coins. If you counterfeit coins, there's some feature that looks a bit off, you be wary. There's probably a reason. So, but it takes time to educate yourself. And, you know, a lot of the new collectors, especially on a valuable note, you don't want to risk spending $5,000 or something on a raw note. You're not 100% sure if it's genuine or not. And that's where PMG can come in, and help that collector while you're going through that learning curve. At least if you're spending that kind of money, you can, it's probably going to be a lot safer for you buying something third-party authenticated. At least you have that comfort.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, that's brilliant, Colin. Thanks so much for your time and for all your knowledge and sharing those notes with us. It's been really good. I would encourage everyone to go to the PMG website. The addresses are on the screen now. And thank you to PMG and NGC for being our partners with the Festival of Coins. Thank you so much, Colin. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't miss the festival showcase for more supporters.